Ladies and gentlemen, let me educate everybody out there that does not know what's going on. In this country, we have had disease traceability protocols for years. When it comes to disease traceability, an animal can be traced back to its origin usually within an hour and a half to 2 hours, using the protocols in place right now. But here's the kicker. Those protocols are not in a national database. They want the identification of these animals in a national database controlled by the USDA. No, not happening. All right, so what's going on is these button tags have a series of numbers on them, and the first 3 numbers on those tags is the country of origin. In order to get those tags, you have to register your farm with the USDA, which gives them your name, your address, your farm name, your email address, phone number, all of that. All that goes into a national database. Now, here's the thing, and they're talking about profitability. There's 2 key words that the NCBA and the USDA and some more like to throw out. Well, I have asked these folks one question, okay? What profit does that tag get me? Well, I get 10 or 15 cents more a pound at the sale because that animal has that EID tag in him. The answer is no. Zero profit from putting these tags in. Zero. Now, of course, now the animal's in a national database, so the USDA knows what sex they are, how many you have, and where they've been. Okay, that is a problem with me because, any computer can be hacked. And I'm not going to go into a great big long spiel about the EID tags, but I will point you to Sweden and to Ireland of what they did to the beef producers over there and dairy producers once they enacted the EID tag mandate. Within a year, Ireland ordered the slaughter of 41,000 head of cattle to comply with climate change. I smell Bill Gates. Sweden, using the EID tag system and using the database, will assess a $100 per head climate change tax on every producer in Sweden, or in Denmark. I'm sorry, Denmark. Now, I mentioned the $15 million. The $15 million was appropriated for approximately 11 million head of cattle at the time. Okay, those tags cost, if you got them for $2 a piece, well, there's $22 million. Now, I'm going to pull my bogans off to do a little counting. Of course, now I've got Bonk here, and Bonk is the expert when it comes to numbers. All right, that's $22 million. You got to have a computer program to store that information in, and you got to have a wand to read the button every time the animal comes through the head catch. That is extra expense for the farmer. That's extra expense for the livestock auction. And you don't get one thin dime in return. Basically, it's an unfunded mandate with no possibility of profitability except to the packers. Because as everybody knows, most of our choice cuts of our American grown beef is exported. Now, I'm going to get Brett to kind of chime in here a little bit, and we'll have some questions later. Brett, I want you to kind of go over the Beef Checkoff and let people know what kind of bull crap that is. Stage is yours, my friend.
All right. Thanks, DD. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I got you.
All right. Fantastic. Well, the Beef Checkoff started out in 1985, the act and the order, and it essentially was a self-help program. It was an idea floated by ranchers for everybody to kick in $1 a head every time they sold an animal, and it was to promote, educate, and research beef in an effort to increase cattle prices. Well, through the rulemaking process, we got importers in there giving money. We took away the ability to differentiate American product and promote it. And it's gone downhill ever since. I think a checkoff, as it was originally intended to be, would be a very good program, but it's been co-opted by your buddies over there at NCBA, the beef industry
Yeah,
organization,
my buddy.
DD.
Right.
Yeah, being a little facetious there, but the lion's share of half of that dollar stays within states. The state's beef council's job is to collect it. 50 cents of that dollar per head that when you sell an animal stays within your state. The other 50 cents goes to the Cattlemen's Beef Board, a national program. And, the real mischief occurs with that 50 cents that's sent to the national program. NCBA has gotten their fingers into it, and it actually makes up a lion's share of their annual expenditure, their operating funds. They get a majority of the ARs or the projects that the Beef Checkoff does. They get the steepest implementation fee or handling fee, processing fee, whatever you want to call it. And so, NCBA has gotten in there. And I guess what brought me to activism a long time ago, back with the repeal of MCOOL, and I know we're not there yet, but I fought really hard as a younger man to get MCOOL put in place so that American consumers could know where their beef came from, and American cattle producers could compete with imports that are now from over 31 different countries. But it was a long, hard fight. I think that fight started in the early 2000s. It took us Well, it started in the 90s actually, and it took us until 2002 to get it enacted into law, and then the government didn't fund it, and lawsuits and everything else, and it finally took until 2012 or 2013 to actually get it enacted, and we saw some of the best cattle prices we'd ever seen, in that 12, 13, 14 range. But then, as everybody knows, the World Trade Organization repealed MCOOL, uh, or the World Trade Organization ruled against MCOOL and threatened tariffs if the United States did not withdraw the MCOOL law. It was tucked into an omnibus and repealed, and the fight was on to try and get MCOOL back. And so, back to the checkoff, I find out that the states sent money to NCBA's Federation of State Beef Councils, which is a little side hustle NCBA has going on, owned entirely by NCBA. Well, the Federation then funneled money to NAMI, the North American Meat Institute, or USMEF, or maybe both of them, but they both lobbied aggressively against re-implementing MCOOL. Okay, so the first thing we learned from that word salad that I just threw out is that the checkoff is a shell game. Money moves around in several different directions. It's funneled here, it's funneled there, it's funneled from states directly to NCBA's Federation of State Beef Councils. But then the shell game continues when that federation can send money to these other NGOs or whatever they're called that can then turn around and lobby. So, in effect, way back in 2014, I guess what got my dander up was the fact that I was paying the Beef Checkoff. That money was being laundered over to NCBA, who then laundered it to another organization that was fighting directly against my battle to try and get mandatory country of origin labeling put back in place. So I was effectively funding my own demise. You'll hear that a lot from cattlemen who are unhappy with the checkoff. And so I hope that makes sense. You know, we've long called for compliance audits of the checkoff. They do a financial audit every year, but in that financial audit on page 3, it says not a compliance audit. Well, what's a compliance audit? That's, are you following the rules? And the last one that we did, I think, was in 2010. That was, I think it was OCM called for that. And they redacted almost all of the findings of that compliance audit. So we know very, very little about exactly how this money is being spent, where it's going. And I think the American cattle rancher is tired of it. They're tired of seeing it propping up an organization that promotes the beef industry and not the cattle industry. Two entirely different things, right? Cattlemen want to sell cattle high, meat packers want to buy them cheap. And that's the nature of business, but that has to be a pure transaction for a healthy marketplace to occur. What else can I tell you about the checkoff,
Well,
DD?
that's
Questions?
that's exactly where we was going. Every time a cattleman sends an animal to a sale, he takes 50 head of cattle to the sale and sells them. His check is automatically docked $50 for the beef checkoff. And here's the thing. Now, there's several magazines. I just got my Cattleman's Business Mississippi magazine, and in it, pardon me, I got a little frog in my throat. In it is a form that I am supposed to fill out for a private sale. Yeah, if a producer comes up here and he buys 10 of my calves, I'm supposed to fill this form out and send in $1 per head to the NCBA or the Beef Council. Well, I'm going to tell you something. They're smoking crack. I am not sending my money to them. Number one, I'm not a member of the NCBA. Number two, I have heard rumors, unsubstantiated now, but still a rumor, that prior checkoff money was gone to make loans to officers to buy a house, to buy a car. They used checkoff money to lobby Congress to get the $15 million in the omnibus bill for the EID tags that none of the cattlemen want. Now, a lot of cattlemen across the USA right now use these tags, but they use it for their personal purposes. They use it for their personal ranch records. And by all means, I have zero problem with that if you want to do it voluntarily. Zero. But keep in mind, 85% of the cattle producers in this country is considered small producer, and that number is 50 head of cattle or less. Let that sink in. And we're losing them every day to this type of regulations. A wand, just to read those tags, can vary from, I've seen them at $250 all the way to $700 just for the wand. Now, I really throwed some folks, I was in a space, and I really throwed a kink into their little mantra when they said 18 months or older, sexually intact, crossing state lines. So I asked them, I said, why? They said, well, disease traceability. Okay, well, first off, folks, that right there is your breeding age cattle. 18 months is considered breeding age. So I asked them, I said, okay, so I can load my trailer up with 16-month-old bulls, sexually intact, take them across state lines, and I don't need those tags. They said, that's right. I said, well, what disease is an 18-month-old going to transmit that a 16-month-old can't translate? And it was crickets. Well, that's just what we come up with. I'm sorry, you're gonna have to. That dog ain't gonna hunt. You got to do better than that. And on their own website, they are going to push to have these tags put in at birth, and that's really going to stir some stuff up. They need a 70% compliance rate among all the producers to even make this program work. And I don't think they're going to get it, because I know a lot of ranchers are saying absolutely not. But we can answer questions about that. But I want to bring in Slim. And folks, this is Texas Slim from the great state of Texas. And the man is a warrior. He knows more about beef, from farm to table than anybody. Slim, buddy, the floor is yours. Have at it.
Hey, Dee Dee, appreciate the invite. Brianna contacted me today, and she was pretty excited. She's having a toddler issue right now, but hopefully she'll be able to join. But to kind of stand where we are in the cattle industry and to know where we've come from, there's a lot of expertise in here. And, I hit the road back in probably 2019 and started the research in 2017, more on a global perspective and what was going on in the United States. And what we predicted was a track and trace traceability of not only our consumerism, our data collections, but also in our agriculture. And so what, everybody's talking here is that, this is a form of enforcement, a new form of taxation. And if we don't pay attention and we don't start educating both the consumers and the producers in kind in real time, we're going to have some issues here, because one thing that we do have is we have new policy coming and we have new administration, and we have people like Shad Sullivan down here. And, he's very involved. We have a centralized cattle industry with a decentralized, basically compartmentalized, kind of facilitating of information. And so what we have to do is kind of get that peer-to-peer, as Brett said. We need to work peer-to-peer on market access to information, to technology, to policy work. And that's pretty much the foundation of the Beef Initiative and, what we're about. And, we've bridged a lot of gaps over the years of education and awareness. We've brought a lot of consumers to ranchers through the digital kind of revolution we had in beef during COVID. Butcher Box was one of the leading people to take beef to consumers, through beef boxes. And so there was a lot of things that got revolutionized very fast. And what we need to understand is we have cattle producers that want to sell cattle, and then we have cattle that turns into beef, and then beef that turns into meat. And we have a global aggregated system that basically we don't eat our own beef anymore. And we're getting so many exports and imports, that nobody really understands. But I think it was 31 countries that Brett said. If we're getting that much beef imported into the United States and they're not following the same regulatory capture that we're under, then, Americans need to know this. And this is a perfect storm of that education. And so, Dee Dee, you've been leading the charge for a while, and we've seen a lot of pain points in these, disasters that we've had. And, I was part of the Texas wildfire relief and the We're Here documentary that Lee Wells put together. And we look at the suffering that we go through with wildfire relief. Our efforts are now bringing, we're trying to get our own Air Force, because, the tanks were called off during the wildfire, and there's just so much that's unknown right now. And to look at the people that are here and their in-depth knowledge of over 50 years, what we've been through, we have to get people to understand that, the associations of Beef Checkoff. Let's look what's happening with Doge right now. That's surface level discovery. Wait till that hits, multinational corporations that are part of terrorists, part of basically subsidizing our food industry with massive profits, and multinational corporations controlling our processing. That's the bottleneck of everything. And we have to understand that as a nation, and to give the room some education. And it's kind of, it's kind of generalization, but Texas has 254 counties. And at one time we had 254 microprocessing centers, and our cattle producers had a lot more options. And the way that we've really kind of consolidated and centralized is now made a nation sick. Our food system is broke. Our FDA's broke, our CDC's broke, and we have to understand that as cattle producers, there's track and tracing that's coming. They're going to use pattern languages like, this is good for inventory, all the convenience that they always sell, and it'll come through, these type of apparatuses like the Beef Checkoff. We need new options. We need different people basically coming into new associations and having a voice. And Dee Dee, you're leading it there. Shad Sullivan, he went to West Texas State University. That's where I grew up, right here in the Texas Panhandle. I'm right in the belly of the beast of the multinational system up here, and we're pretty close to what's going on. And if you look at labor force, we've been building processing centers in the beef initiative. One of our biggest pain points was labor. What happens whenever we have, exodus of migrants and people that are here illegally? JBS, they're already laying off people. Tyson's laying off people. What happens to our beef prices right now? Wholesale prices are at record highs. And so there's a shift coming. We're low inventories, and, they're going to bring a shift in the industrial way that they do things, and track and traceability is going to be part of that. That's the EID chips. We have massive transformation coming in AI technology, and they're going to use that against our producers, and we can actually use it for ourselves as well. There's a big revolution coming, and that's a good thing to be aware of. We don't have to worry too much. We have Brianna Sagdahl, and she's helping writing policy in different states. She's having luck in South Dakota right now, so we're very close to the new administration, and I know several people here on this spaces as well. So Dee Dee, you leading the charge like this, Cattlemen United. Let's bring the consumers in. Let's educate, because this is in real time that we can really look at these pain points, pay attention to what corruptions they're finding. I can't wait till, Tyson and multinational corporations like JBS have to uncover their books. And so I'll kind of leave it there, and I hope that Brianna can come in, but I'll stay around for some questions. I've been on the road for 5 years now. Been to Australia, been to Asia, been 200,000 miles across the United States. We have over 250 ranchers and producers, and just, people that like to go farm to table within the beef initiative. We have beef maps right now that is you can just sign up, and consumers are finding these either small producers or we're going to bring in herd share programs. And so we're doing a lot in the beef initiative and the I Am Texas Slim Foundation. And Brianna Sagdahl, we have Jeff Forrester. He's a new loud voice for the beef initiative. He's running a lot of our press releases and our PR work. And we're running a campaign right now, and I'll shut up, but it's a very important campaign, and it's the savebeef.org campaign. And what we're doing is we're going after beef.com. I'm the only person in the world right now that can acquire beef.com, and we've been building out a journey and a roadmap to where we can offer it to everybody in the United States. And by doing that, we're going to decentralize communications, and we're going to encrypt data. We're going to bring technology to the cattle industry that's never been seen before. If you look at enterprise-wide software that's written for the cattle industry, who funds that? And you look at the data that they're going after, and Dee Dee, you brought it up, look at TikTok, but look at data science. And what's the biggest commodity in the world right now is your data. And whenever they can get that into our agriculture, and they can actually control supply chain lines with this new ledger of blockchain and AI technology, we need to pay attention. So I'll kind of cut it short there, and hopefully Brianna can kind of talk about our policy work. And I would love for you to offer Jeff Forrester up to the room. He can have some good insight and build on what I kind of just alluded to right now.
Yeah, Jeff,
Thanks, Dee Dee.
if you want to request a mic, we'll make sure we'll get you one. Go ahead, Tennessee, and then we'll probably go to Ranch.
Yeah, Jeff's coming up right now. We'll add him as a speaker. Just I have a quick question for you, Texas Slim and Brett or Dee Dee, whichever one. Just also, if we could retweet the room and just get it out there for everyone that needs to know this. This sounds like a good time for all of us to be educated on where our beef is coming from. So real quick, I'm really excited with the new Trump administration. So my question is, with Brooke Rollins being the new Secretary of Agriculture, do you think that she's going to serve America's farmers and ranchers and the agricultural community as a whole? Are you guys excited about her, or what are your feelings in regards to her?
Go ahead, Brett.
Well, I would say at least she's not a $1 million a year dairy lobbyist like Tom Vilsack was. She's not a concentrated poultry farmer like Sonny Perdue was. So I don't know. I mean, she was the what that think tank in down there in Texas. She was the big boss of that America First Policy Institute. That's what it was. So I mean, if she understands conservative politics, then I think at least she'll be grounded and have some principles to guide her. But we have to remember that big ag is a powerful lobbying force in Washington D.C. and there's going to be tremendous pressure to preserve the status quo. I was listening to a Senate Ag hearing the other day, and these guys, you know, they go on and on about how we've got to get this inflation down in food prices, record high food prices, and then the very next presentation would be about these low commodity prices for farmers. And none of these guys ever stop to question, where does it go? You have farmers getting record low prices, and that's mostly in terms of grain because, you know, as the cattle price, we're seeing a rally of attrition right now with the smallest cow herd in 71 years. But generally speaking, you have low commodity prices, you have record high food prices. Isn't it wouldn't it have been a prudent question to ask, where does all the money in between go? And that's sucked into these big multinational corporations that have all this lobbying influence on somebody like Brooke Rollins. So it's going to be interesting. One of the exciting things I think is having RFK there. He excites me and he scares me all at the same time. But I will say one thing for RFK is he understands corporate capture of our regulatory agencies. And so if we can address that and get not just the beef industry perspective, but the cattle industry perspective to Washington, D.C., I think common sense will have a chance to sort itself out. So I'm on the fence on Brooke Rollins, but I guess I'm cautiously optimistic.
Yeah, I think you
Yeah,
took the words right out of my mouth. Go ahead, Texas.
Yeah, I have to agree right there because, if anybody acts like they know what's really going on with this new administration and appointees, some people are going to be very transparently, aware of what RFK is going after. Somebody like Brooke Rollins being from Texas and, her qualifications, as Brett brought up. I look at FFA, I look at new money coming into these types of programs that are going to be more peer to peer and all that waste in the middle that nobody understands or nobody ever gets to have eyeballs on. Well, I believe that type of transparency is coming, and I think new money will come into the smaller communities. And I think Texas is a good example of that and everything we do here in FFA. So if you look at the next generation coming up and the type of education that's needed, with somebody like RFK in there, we're going after the cleanest beef in the nation now, or the cleanest beef in the world. And we're going to look at, everything. And, we don't want any more corruption, but do we want the full transparency that's coming? And that's what we have to be prepared for to, kind of move with, we need to produce very healthy beef, and there's going to be new inputs that come. And I think Brooke Rollins will kind of lead that charge, but I think that there's going to be new education that comes. And, like I say, I'm on the fence as well, but I'm optimistic.
Yeah, I call myself cautiously optimistic. Now, of course, I'm a small producer. That's what I am, just like, a lot of us out there are. And so I'm cautiously optimistic about what's going on. On paper, she reads good, but I'm more interested in action. I want to know what her policy is. I want to know point blank. And I sent her an invite to the space along with Harriet Hageman, along with Thomas Massey. I want to know their policy straight up on this EID tag mandate. That's one thing. Now, I have seen a push, which I'm proud to say. I've seen Senator John Thune actually on the Senate floor push to reinstate cool. Now, I'm going to put this in basically fifth grade terms and just speak plainly. Basically, the NCBA lobbied along with the Packers for this. I watched a podcast where the NCBA, which is the National Cattlemen's Beef Association, said that they did a survey. Now, this was back in 2015, that Americans didn't seem interested to know where their beef came from. Well, there's a lot of change since then. But the downfall of Cool came when Canada and Mexico filed a complaint with the World Trade Organization. The Packers jumped on board because they would have to differentiate a USA bred, born, harvested, slaughtered, and packaged animal versus one from Venezuela, Argentina, Brazil, or wherever. And basically, it was going to cost them a bunch of money to do that. And they didn't want to do it. So basically, the NCBA, the World Trade Organization, and the four major packers is telling the American consumer where your beef comes from on that big box store shelf is none of your damn business. That's the whole thing of it right there. You have imported animals that come into this country or slaughtered, they are packaged, and a USA beef label goes on them. Now, that animal can be from Argentina, it can be from Brazil, Australia, it doesn't matter. If it was packaged in the U.S., it's USA beef. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to use a cuss word here. That's bullshit. If Americans want to buy an American beef, born, raised, fed out, done right, then it needs to be USA beef only. That's what it needs to be. But they're not going to give you, the consumer, that option. I've got a real problem with that. A real problem with that. So, Ranch, go ahead, buddy. We'll see your hand up.
Well, I'm RanchMama Shanen. I'm also a part of the Beef Initiative group. And there's several of us in here that are working to solve those exact problems. Beef Maps is a listing that we've put together to list all of us ranchers on one website, so that consumers can go to one place, find a rancher in their area, and buy their beef directly. And then we also have Welcome to Beef that we're helping consumers learn about, so that you can go straight there and you can purchase directly from our Beef Initiative ranchers. And it ships straight from our ranches to their doors. So I love working with the government, but we also have to plan to take care of this ourselves. I guess that's what I'm interested in doing, is helping ranchers help themselves sell beef directly. And I think that we've seen quite a momentum here lately with consumers wanting to go direct to ranchers. I know Marcy from Rattlesnake is on here. I think we've got a couple of other people that are on Beef Maps that are here in this group as well.
Well, send them a mic if they just, let us know. Be happy to send you a mic. We got plenty of them. The more comments we got, questions asked, the more educated people will be. Again, I want to thank everybody for coming. This is our second Cattlemen United space, and we're going to keep going. I've kind of been out of pocket for a while, and but I also have a Cattlemen United group that you can join. But if anybody wants a mic, just request it. My lovely co-host up there will make sure you get it. And if we have any hands or any questions for anybody.
I think Taylor did. Go ahead, Taylor.
Hey, Dee.
Hey, buddy.
Glad you're having the space tonight. I'm a grain farmer here in southwestern Illinois. And I just want to say, you're so right on everything that's going on in the beef industry. We've got record surplus in grain. We're importing beef. None of it makes any sense. All of the beef, I don't care if it's beef, lamb, pork, it all should be produced here in the U.S. We've got standards here that are far surpass and exceed quite a few other nations. There's no reason why we should be importing any beef from outside sources when we have such an abundance of grain and grass in this country. So that, and I mean, everybody kind of, there's quite a few documentaries out there on the big four packers, and everybody should go out there and watch those and educate yourself on the big four packers: Cargill, Tyson, JBS, and National Beef, and the fact that they control over 85% of the market. It shouldn't be that way. Where I'm at here in Illinois, I'm blessed that we've got a couple small local butcher shops, and we've got a variety of different types of producers. And it doesn't matter if you want, just regular beef, if you want non-GMO fed, or if you want organic. There's a little bit of something out there for everybody, and everybody's got a different price point. So I just think there's a lot of different options out there, and the consumers really need to be educated on what's out there. And
Yeah, thanks, Taylor. I appreciate that. Go ahead, Jeff.
Good evening, Dee Dee. Thanks for having
Good
us this evening. And I'm going to echo some of the same sentiment that Texas Slim has. I think one thing to point out, though, is as we look at the beef producers, we talk about the big four, and an interesting comment about the big four: JBS is owned by Brazil. National Beef is now owned by Brazil. Cargill is a global commodity broker. They're not a U.S. meat packer. They're a global commodity broker. And then you've got Smithfield, owned by China. The problem is we no longer have interest in quality. We have interest in price. The same thing happened in the retail sector, where everybody wants to pay less. So instead of getting quality products, we import from China disposable items. So consumers have trained the market to how to react. Our job at savebeef.org is to help retrain consumers on what they should expect and how to drive the market and the power they have behind their voice and the power that their dollar has every time they go to the store. So we're talking about things that are technology driven. We're talking about ways to partner with us. If there's anybody out here listening tonight that wants to know how to get involved, that wants to come alongside the Texas Slim organizations, reach out to savebeef.org. Like RanchMama Shanen said, we put together beefmaps.com to help the Jane Doe find beef locally grown, close to her, delivered to her house. She knows where it comes from. You're shaking hands with your rancher and getting a quality product. And I can't repeat this enough. We have to take a stand as consumers. We can get in these spaces and have great talks and great discussions, but we have to get the word out from us to our fellow ranchers and consumers that we control the market. The market should not control us. The imbalance in trade last year, we imported 4 million pounds, actually more than that, of beef, and we exported 2.75. It just doesn't make sense. The numbers don't play true. And you're right about the big four using their lobby powers. But I think there's a new game in town with this administration. I know we've got to wait and meet them out and find out what they've got in store for us. But I think as long as we stay engaged, and everybody that's listening here stays engaged, and Dee Dee, thank you for reaching out and inviting folks like Brooke Rollins, Hageman, and listening to what's going on the floor, because that's where we can make a difference. We can make a difference as long as we stay engaged. But I appreciate you giving me the mic for a few seconds this evening. I'm not going to take up any more time, but thanks again for having us.
Yeah, well, Jeff, I definitely appreciate it. And, that's what it's all about. I want to tell everybody something. What I just told y'all a while ago is that 85% of the cattle producers in this country is considered a small producer. That's 50 head of cattle or less. Now, if that rancher sells from farm to table, basically you buy an animal on his farm, he takes it to the slaughterhouse for you. Well, let me tell y'all something. That farmer is not going to put a damn thing in that animal that he's not going to feed to his own family, because he does feed his own family from his own farm. And I guarantee you, You're not going to hear that out of Argentina, Brazil, Australia, or any of these other countries. That's just a proven fact. If you want to know how the animal was fed, ask them. If you want to know what they were vaccinated with, ask them. They'll tell you. Now, another thing, and it's going to pop up sooner or later, is mRNA. Everybody knows what's going on. The mRNA has already been approved for use in the swine industry. All right, and now they're tinkering with it for this so-called bird flu, which I think is a load of hooey. Because I'm sorry, I haven't seen any ducks, eagles, sparrows, cardinals, quail, or turkey, or anything else kick over dead from the damn bird flu. Only chickens. And the only reason they're dead is because they're killing them. Now you wonder why you got an egg shortage? So that's, my 2 cent worth in there. We're going to go to Pam, and then we're going to Bonk. Now, Bonk, you take it easy on me, Bonk. But go ahead, Pam.
Thank you for letting me have the mic for a minute. I just had a couple of questions. What is the relationship with Indian country producers like the Seminole tribe and some of the producers out in the Northwest?
Brett, can you chime in on that? Do you have any idea what she's talking about?
Well, the Seminole tribe is one of the largest producers in the nation in South Florida. They own, thousands and thousands of acres, and they produce cattle.
Okay,
so
yeah.
I was
Are
wondering,
you talking about the Florida raised cattle? Okay.
Right. And then there are the intertribal, well, there's the tribes out west, northwest, and out west that produce cattle. And I was wondering what the relationship, if any, that you had with them.
Well,
and if they had the same interest that you did.
Yeah, Mario Tarango is a region. He is with RCAF USA, and he's in Florida. The trouble with is that some of your largest ranches in the United States, cattle ranches, is in Florida, and a lot of people don't know that. You have some monsters in Florida, but where does your beef get processed? Your beef gets processed at processing plants in the Midwest. Now, what if you had a Cargill or a JBS, or not them, of course, but a competitor of those scopes here in the Southeast? You got Alabama, Mississippi, Tennessee, Georgia, Florida, North and South Carolina. The inventory there will be more than enough to keep them busy and provide perfect competition to the 4 major packers. If somebody doing that could get past the USDA and their regulations for even opening one. I would love to see a large packing plant here in the Southeast. I would love to see that.
Do you know someone that could speak with the Seminole tribe about that? Because they have the ability, if anybody does. They have the money and they have the ability.
Yeah, I'll chime in here. With the beef initiative, like I said, we've been building processing centers, and I'm here in the Texas Panhandle, and we have all 4 of the big nationals here. Plus, we have Cabinets, which is a regional based, family based operation. But, as Dee Dee said, we have to look at distribution and the bottleneck that the processing centers, now, we have to battle with. And if we can get, the theory of, where Texas came from with microprocessing centers up to a regional base, we have a regional based processing center that Cole Bolton of the Beef Initiative, he's one of the founders as well, USDA, and he shipped beef from Texas to Florida. But we have to look at distribution, and how we control distribution is, getting cattle producers to join in with, different types of, wholesale. And, how do we approach, the full distribution vertical integration of, from basically a state like Florida? Well, most of that beef's going overseas. I mean, that's just a general consensus. Who do they have contracts with? And, those producers, what are their contracts with the inputs and, the antibiotics and everything? If you're an independent producer, as Dee Dee brings up, 50 head or less, you don't have to answer to that same system. And we have to look at processing the same way. We have to look at community based. We have one here in Canyon, Texas. It's Panhandle Processing. It's the Trammell family. I'm in partnership with them. And we have we're feeding people in a 30-mile radius out of one processing center. So there's a lot of ways to look at processing and distribution. And it starts with consumer demand, as Jeff brought up.
So I don't know if the Navajo have cattle. I have to check into that. I believe they do, but it would be worthwhile. And they have the ability to do what you're speaking about. It's just a question. It's just a question of someone like perhaps even the governor who's made deals with the Seminole in the past, successful deals,
Sure.
to chat with them about it. And I was just wondering if there was someone in the circle that had those connections.
Well, we have Bernie Hansen. He's with Better Fed Foods, and he's been in the food industry and the cattle industry and the input industry for 50 years now. And he's up in South Dakota doing some negotiations out of Halleck, South Dakota. And what they're doing is operating within the reservations up there, the grasslands. And there's 1.3 million cattle in that area of that community. And what happened is a cheese plant shut down. And now they're going to go in there and basically turn it into a full food security system. And these cattle producers, and some of them are from the reservations, will be able to have another bid. We like to call it another bid. And so screw the beef checkoff. We can become the beef checkoff, but it starts with that processing. And if we have that success up in South Dakota, processing center comes along with that. And we do have the Beef Initiative Association Council, where we do advise and counsel anybody that's wanting to have better education from mobile processing, poultry, into beef cattle, everything. So we do have that outlet. Jeff Forrester, he'll kind of allude a little bit more information. He's a good point of contact.
Thank you for taking my questions. I believe that making contact with the tribes like you've discussed about up north, it would be well worth someone's while to get with the Seminole if it was possible, and to have some sort of agreement, because they make very good partners. Navajo do, and so the Seminole tribe. Thank you.
Okay, Tennessee, you got anything,
Yeah,
buddy?
no, I do. I appreciate that. It's really good advice and something we should all look into. I wanted to let everybody know I put up top the beefinitiative.com. So if everyone could just retweet that out, and that would help everyone have just some leg about where we're going, just to let everyone know. But Bonk is next. If we could go to Bonk and listen to the question.
Yeah, now before you start, Bonk. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I got a lot of respect for this man, but me and him do butt heads every once in a while. But now he's a damn good fella. I like him. Go ahead, buddy.
I came to learn today. I came to learn. I'm coming up today. I'm the dumbest one on the dais for this, so I have questions. A couple of them economic, and then one of them medical. So on the economic side of things, I wasn't aware, and just full disclaimer, I don't buy my pigs or my cows from a grocery store. Like I develop relationships with local ranchers because there's a specific kind of pig I like. There's a specific kind of cow I like. I like Scottish Highlands cows. You can't just find that in a grocery store. So I don't do inputs at the grocery stores. But from an economic standpoint, I wasn't aware that if we imported a head of cattle from another country, say Brazil, I'll use them predominantly as the example because they're a BRICS country, and the BRICS countries are getting pretty hostile with us. That as long as it is processed up here, it gets a USA stamp label. So with all the threat of tariffs going on, and for those of you who don't know me, I'm an economics kind of guy, and I'm very against tariffs, but I don't think they work, but I don't want to turn it into a tariff space. But from a tariff standpoint, if the objective of a producer is to acquire an input behind the protected cost, right? By that I mean, if you put a tariff on something coming from Brazil, then oftentimes you'll see friendshoring, or they'll try to source it locally, whatever it is, in order to avoid the tariff. But if everything's getting a USA stamp on it, even if it's coming from a tariffed country, how does one avoid falling into that trap of having to be subject? Like, do all of you just de facto become tariffed as a result of the processors importing these cattle from these other countries that are going to have tariff prices? Or is like, how do you get around, like, do you have to go to a direct to consumer model? Like, how does that work?
Well, the tariff would be leveled at the port before processing. Like Brazil, for example, we don't import any live cattle from Brazil. So let's use Canada for an example. Live cattle do come in from Canada. So at the border, that tariff would be levied at the border. If you like numbers, I've got a couple here. 2023 total production of beef in the United States was 27 billion pounds. We imported 3.75 billion pounds plus 2 million head of live cattle from Canada and Mexico, the only countries that we import from. And if you would convert those live cattle into carcasses, do a conversion into the meat that should come from those 2 million head, that would be about 5.6 billion pounds of beef that we imported in 2023. So about 21% of our total beef supply was imported. Rule of thumb in economics is if you increase supply 1%, you will decrease price of that commodity by 2%.
Yep, 100%.
So,
And I guess what I'm trying to get at here is somewhere along the supply chain, there's going to be somebody that wants an unprotected cost. They want something that's not tariff. But if everything that comes in is going to the processor and it just gets stamped with a USA label, like how does that link in the supply chain? How can they differentiate if it's all just got the same country stamp? Essentially, because from that point forward, that cost gets passed on every step of the way, ultimately to the final consumer. So I guess I'm just trying to figure out how you guys are going to dance between the raindrops there without ultimately, I mean, from a consumer perspective, like how I'm having a really hard time trying to formulate this because I've never actually pondered a situation where we're blending tariffed and non-tariff goods at the same facility and then exporting it out at the, with the same labels. So I apologize if I'm not being like super clear. I'm trying to wrap my head around it.
Yeah, it's that the duty would be paid at the port.
Yeah, I know where that
That's
happens.
where the duty would happen.
But let's
and there's lot tracing that occurs, whether it's a live animal or a truckload of lean trim that comes in. There's lot tracing that occurs because they have to keep track of that for back tracing. But then you're right. Yes, once it comes in and it goes through the grinder, it's anonymous at that point. It would be kind of like importing Canadian steel and building an American whatever.
Bonk, are you asking?
garage
so
frame on it.
so we'll actually turn the Canadian steel into rolled stainless or something. But let's say I'm Kroger, right? I'm the Kroger grocery chain, and I decide for once in my company's history that I actually, want to do right by the customer, and I only want to buy non-tariff like beef. I understand where the tax gets applied for the tariff, but if I'm the grocer, right? If I'm the wholesaler, if I'm the person just grabbing this to send it off either direct to consumer or to the grocery store, because again, as you're saying, as it gets ground up, it all gets put together. So it almost sounds like there's no way to avoid it.
Are you asking how
to
the
avoid-
price affects the price you pay at the grocery store if they're combined and it raises the price of the locally grown? Is that what you're asking?
Exactly.
Okay.
I know if I go to Didi and I go, and I think he raises Angus, I go, I want an Angus cattle. Like I know I have acquired my input for the protected costs. That's simple. That's a very short supply chain. But when we're talking like a global one, I mean, it just, and the steel analogy doesn't really work for me because we're getting raw steel from Canada and we turn it into A5 stainless, and then I mean that turns into a whole other thing.
Well, you're getting, but I mean, think about it. You're getting cattle from Canada, and what are you turning those into?
Yeah,
ground beef, ribeyes, whatever. But I mean, what you're saying here leads us to a very important point that I would like to bring up if I can have a minute.
Go ahead, buddy.
Okay, we get really, I'm assuming that we have consumers on here that maybe can get a little confused with direct marketing and the big four and everything else. And if there's one thing that I can tell them, it's to know right now that even in record high beef prices, rural America is only getting 52% of what they're paying at the grocery store. And that comes from a graph that or from a data set that USDA AMS has kept for decades, okay, that takes into consideration the price of all beef products and the price of live fed cattle, okay? The price of live fed cattle matters. The big market matters. And the reason that I want to go into that is because like Greg Gunthorpe and Mike Calicrate runs Ranch Foods Direct out in Colorado, and he will tell you there is nothing more numerous than failed direct to consumer marketing schemes. And the reason that he says that is because he said that we all need to work together to work on a transparent, competitive market for cattle, because that base value is what we all work from. That price of cattle, because if you're direct selling to a consumer, you need that base price to be close to what you're selling to that consumer so that you can hold on to them. Plus, if you're going to start building meat packing plants at some point, I think that it's only right. And it's something that I think that RFK has mentioned, even though he's in the wrong department. We hope he can reach across the aisle or across the hallway to Brooke, the new Secretary of Agriculture. We need to get American beef into our schools and our nursing homes and into our hospitals, our government food procurement. And that's why we all need to work together on this competitive, transparent market for all the cattle in this country. Direct marketing is great, but it's value added marketing, and it's righteous. We should always buy American, and we should always buy as locally as we can. Those should be the two rules of consumerism, right? But we all have to work together on this. And where it ties into tariff versus non-tariff, have you ever heard, why do we import beef? That's a question that I get a lot. We import beef from 31 countries in America. Why do we import beef? And that's a loaded question. I have the answer. I'll tell you why USDA says that we import beef. And this is kind of a mouthful, but let it soak over you for a minute. Imports of a commodity, and this is according to USDA, generally serve to increase net social welfare. It means it's going to make our net social welfare better in the United States of America. Next sentence, to the extent that consumer choice is broadened. Consumer choice, that would imply that we have a choice, right? Right now we don't. It comes in, it's imported, it's unwrapped, rewrapped, labeled product of the USA. But to the extent that consumer choice is broadened and the increased supply of the imported commodity leads to a price decline, that's what I was talking about. A 1% increase in supply leads to a 2% decrease in price, roughly. Gains in consumer surplus will outweigh losses in domestic producer surplus. So what they're saying is it's more important to take care of the American consumer than it is to take care of the American rancher. And that's why we import beef, to give them another choice. Now, I don't think that all American beef, if we get MCOOL, has to be more expensive. What I see happening, and this is where we go back to this tariff discussion, I think that imported beef becomes cheaper. I don't think mandatory country of origin labeling increases the cost of American beef one bit. I just think it lets us compete, even though that imported product is going to be cheaper, if we're honest with the consumer, because it's the consumer's right to know where that beef comes from. Because as we've been talking, okay, we have decreased our import standards systematically since the 1990s to facilitate imports, because we're a free trade nation now, or at least we were up until this last election. And any trade is good trade according to the free traders. It doesn't matter who gets hurt. Somebody's going to win, somebody's going to lose. So I don't know. I hope that cleared it up a little bit for the consumers on here, that I hate hearing ranchers think that they have to lose for the consumer to win, or for a consumer to think that the cattleman needs to lose for them to win. We're all in it together, but what we need to get to is a real value, and your direct marketed meat, I believe, always will have a better value, not because there's any magic, but because you have more choice, you have a chance at a relationship with somebody you're buying it from, and because these small processors are going to age that meat. They're going to hang it for 14 days or 21 days, and that's the silver bullet for beef quality in my concern.
Yes.
So,
So
thank you.
So one of the tenets of free capitalism is actually that there's supposed to be equilibrium between the purchaser or the wholesaler and the consumer. So the idea that one must win in order for the other one to lose, like that flies in the face of just basic capitalistic tendencies, right? You can go all the way back to Adam Smith's Wealth of Nations for examples of that. So we're not practicing good capitalism here, and it sounds like you've got four people kind of dominating your industry that appear to be kind of the break in the that equilibrium of market. Which I don't want to hog up too much time going into that, so I'll leave that alone. If somebody could maybe tell me what, because you said 52% of the money goes to you now. I'm going to ask a question about medical stuff real quick. If somebody could tell me what that was in the 1980s, so I can have kind of a snapshot in time comparison while I ask that, I'd be appreciative. But my other question is, so the other thing I always kind of worry about, another reason why I buy my cows and my pigs directly, and any other kind of animal I just shoot. I'm always worried about mRNA stuff, right? And I've got a couple of, I'll call them colleagues, people I have professional entanglements with, captains of industry, that over recent years have been buying enormous amounts of agricultural land, right? And I know for a fact that both of these gentlemen are very much on the idea of injecting, and Dee Dee briefly touched on it, mRNA technology and vaccines directly into the food supply in order to passively inoculate the populace, whether they want to be or not, which again removes that choice there, and also brings me into some concerns about when we source things internationally and then we just combine them. How do we know that we're getting things that are certified to not have that content if we want it, because we can't really trust some of our trade partners in that regard. So how does all of this, like, can this technology, this tracking technology, this tagging technology, all of these things be used in some way for people that are concerned about that, to avoid essentially becoming the guinea pigs and forced into that kind of, we'll call it medical technology? I'm not a big fan of it. Like, is there some sort of power lever there to, because again, I'm still getting stuck on the fact that it comes from Brazil and then it gets a USA stamp on it. Like, that blows my freaking mind. Like, can somebody
That's not
kind
the
of
only
help me out
country,
on this?
buddy. That's not
Well,
the only country.
I'm just using Brazil as an example because they're specifically BRICS, and we're specifically being very antagonistic towards BRICS right now. I mean, I could use any Latin country. I don't know if we import from India, same problem there.
Yeah.
Well, that would be another BRICS country, but
Well, see,
I'm
my
just using
biggest
them as
problem.
just one example.
Yeah, my biggest problem, Bonk, is this: is what we're importing. You have no idea what that animal's been injected with, and you can go to the store and you can buy a 5-pound tube of hamburger meat. Okay, ground beef. That 5-pound pack of ground beef can have the DNA of 57 to 65 different animals in that one pack. That's what we're talking about, because it all goes in one big vat all together. Don't make a damn if the cow's from Kansas or Timbuktu or Brazil or China or anywhere else. All that beef goes into one vat and gets ground. You have no idea what's in it. That's the reason we're saying bring back cool. That's the only way you're going to know.
Okay, cool.
Okay, thank you so much, Bonk. We appreciate it, Bonk. But we do have a couple of other hands that have been waiting quite a while. So if we could get to those hands, and then if you have more questions, we'll circle back round to you, if you don't mind. So Piers Plow, he was next in line. Go ahead, Piers.
Hey, great. Thanks for letting me come up. Such a lot of great information, great space. Thanks for letting me come up and ask a couple of questions. I, I don't think, as far as the last speaker was commenting, I don't think you can get inoculated by eating a cow that's been MRA vaccinated. But that's I don't know. That's kind of out there. But my questions are, we're talking about cool country of origin labeling, and the last I read is that the USDA was going to implement some sort of reformed rules starting January 1st on 2026. And I was just wondering if anybody wanted to give us a little bit more of the backstory on that issue, and whether these proposed changes that are going to be taking effect are going to help anything. And the second question I have is what are the problems in terms of the Cattlemen's Association and small cow, ranchers or small herd, whatever. What are the problems you have with the Biden administration that you're hoping will be alleviated by the Trump administration? What are your expectations for the Trump administration? We tried to make contact with, RFK Jr. is in charge of the FDA, but there's a new agriculture secretary, Brooke Rollins, in charge of the USDA. Have y'all tried making contact with her or reached out to see if she's willing to address some of the issues? So thanks for letting me ask the question.
Yeah, well, I sent her a link. Not only did I send it to Brooke Rollins, I sent it to Harriet Hageman from Wyoming. I sent it to Thomas Massey. And because Hageman and Massey has been pretty much at the forefront of this mandatory EID tag mandate. Senator John Thune, Senator Rounds are pushing for cool. And but the thing is you're going to have a massive amount of lobbying against it for the simple reason that your major packers don't want it. Now, on the EID tag too, another thing I needed to tell y'all was they're talking about disease traceability, and that's for the foreign countries. The foreign countries are requiring this. But here's the thing. They're only requiring disease traceability from the feedlot to the packer. That's all they care about. They don't care about the producer or the backgrounder or anybody of that nature. They care about from the feedlot to the packer. And but they're putting the cost and everything back on the producer. So, I invited Brooke Rollins. Like Brett said, like Texas said, we're kind of cautiously optimistic about it. And we're just going to have to sit back and, and see what happens. But that's about the best we can do right now.
Hey, DD, if I could jump in terms of Brooke
Go ahead,
Rollins,
buddy.
one of the first big tests that she's going to have is RCAF USA, the group that I was the president of here up till about a month ago, and the South Dakota Stock Growers Association, a South Dakota Cattle Group, and 3 couples filed a lawsuit over the mandatory ID issue against USDA. Now that rule went into effect on November 5th. They filed it about a week before it went into effect. Tom Vilsack's USDA asked for an extension, and then shortly after inauguration, an acting deputy USDA administrator directed or asked for a motion to dismiss that lawsuit. So we are refiling that lawsuit right now and going to come back again. And one of the first things Brooke Rollins will do is be made privy to all the technicalities of our objections to mandatory ID, and she will get to decide whether to go forward with that lawsuit or not. So it'll be a good test.
Yeah, I hope we prevail on that. I really do. I do want to welcome Carmen. Hey, sweetheart, how are you doing?
I'm doing good, DD. How are you doing? I was a little late, but I wasn't gonna miss it for the world. So I love all the information being brought up. Hey, Miss Tennessee Tracy, and everyone in here. God bless you. And I'm just sitting here listening and learning.
Okay.
Well, we love you,
All right.
Carmen. We're so glad you're here with us.
Okay, who did somebody else have
Jeff.
their hand up?
Yeah, DD.
Yeah,
Jeff had a question. He's been very patient.
Go ahead, Jeff.
Yeah, thanks, Dee. So one thing that I'd like to point out about EID and EID tags and technology is, as we're moving into the next generation of ranchers, they're very comfortable in technology, but they're not very well versed in government and the government of agriculture. So I think one thing to point out is that we should focus our efforts not only on the consumer, but on the new generation of rancher. And I think I saw Natalie Meeks is in our group. She's chimed in this evening, and she is part of Cattle Mafia. Actually, she is Cattle Mafia. She's the mafia boss of Cattle Mafia. And her whole thing is to ensure that we're educating the youth in agriculture to make sure that the next generation coming up doesn't just jump in line with the beef checkoff. They don't just jump in line with EID, and they don't take on that agricultural poverty mindset that farming and ranching is a loss. Because we've heard way too many times people say, hey, man, if you're going to be a rancher, you're going to be a farmer, that's great, but be sure you have another job to support your hobby. And that's something that we're trying to dispel, and that she is absolutely working to dispel. And I think that Texas Slim would agree with that. I know I've heard him say it before, that this is a business, and our ranchers and our farmers treat things as a business. And when they do, they win. So if we're collective around the business of agriculture, and we take our voice and our message to Washington, D.C., whether it be to Brooke Rollins, whether it be to RFK, or whether it be to the desk of the president, and explain why we're upset with the rules and regulations that are coming out of the USDA, that there's power in the voice. And we've seen it in the last cycles. People are getting tired of getting pushed around, and cool, that's a neat thing. However, I think Bonk asked a great question. How do we label ground beef if cool labeling comes into effect, and all of a sudden, you mentioned it yourself, 56 different DNA samples in a 5-pound tube of ground beef. Where do we go from then? So anyway, I'll check out and listen to you.
Well, my understanding of cool is this. If cool is put in place, then that one animal has to be born, raised, fed out, slaughtered, and packaged from the U.S. There's the kicker. That's the reason that your four major packers and the NCBA are against it, because they would put extra work on them to actually separate a herd of Nebraska raised Angus from a herd of Argentina raised Brahman. You see what I'm saying? They'll have to separate the countries to actually do that. Because if it's mandatory country of origin labeling, if it comes from Argentina or wherever, or Brazil, it's going to have to be labeled Brazilian beef. And that's going to be the major rub with the NCBA, and why I don't know, when the NCBA is supposed to be for the U.S. cattlemen. But, right now, in my humble opinion, they're lying in bed so bad with the Packers right now. I mean, they can smell each other's farts. And
that's where they get their money.
Yeah, exactly. So, but it's time the consumer makes the choice.
Mm-hmm.
It's time
Absolutely.
time to consume. If I walk into a place and I see a piece of beef that says Brazilian beef, or if I see a piece of beef that says USDA farm raised Angus, well, I'm gonna pick the USA Angus, because I'm gonna buy everything as much as I can made in USA, and I'm damn sure gonna buy the meat. But by the same token, I would lots rather walk out to a guy's farm and pick out a 900 or 1,000-pound cows. Hey, yeah, I'll take that one right there. Take it to the slaughterhouse for me. Then you know.
And that says one more time, that's how we educate consumers, though. We educate the consumer and give the consumer choice. But if we educate the consumer the benefits and the values of the nutrient-dense beef that's raised on the ranches in the United States, then we win. And we win over and over and over again, because consumers are not dumb. Exactly. And they don't mind paying a little bit more for a good product. But we have to remind them that this is not Walmart. Nothing against the shelves in Walmart, but this is not a Walmart product. This can't be made by 10-year-olds in a sweatshop and sold for $1.
Yeah, and that's a very good point. And what Brett said earlier, we've got to educate the consumer down to the cow level, not the beef, the steak in the retail storefront. We've got to get there to where we can understand what the cattle producers are going through, and we've got to go back to worshiping the cow like we used to, and that was community based and everything that we're talking about here. And if we look at, if we're able to, get processing centers like we talk about, there's hundreds of processing centers that need throughput. That throughput in a microprocessing comes from consumer demand that's more local, and it's the education and the awareness is that consumer, understanding that they have an option right now, with what happened during COVID and what JBS and NCBA. And to answer the question about the Seminoles are contracted with NCBA. Shad Sullivan just informed me. And so if you look about the contracts and everything we have to do, we have to get throughput through a different basically processing bottleneck at this point in time. And just what Jeff said and what Brett said, we have to educate both the cattle producer at the same time we're educating the consumer, but also educating the next generation, because that next generation can educate the older generation and let them know that there's an inversion of consumer demand happening. And if we look at health and everything that the narrative is in the United States, our food is going to get very clean very quickly. And there's going to be shortages in certain things. I always said back in 21 that they're going to turn beef into caviar, and that's going to happen. We have low inventories in the United States. 80% of our consumption in the United States is ground beef. Whenever you look at that, it's daunting. And so how do you eliminate all this? Well, it's relationship building in a community-based system, bringing liquidity back to the local communities, and being involved with education of the cow again, understanding that there's more than one cut. There's more than a ribeye, and we have to understand that the full cow utilization and everything that the cow is needs to be kept at home. I mean, look at our hides. We have to talk about hides. Where did our hides go? And you buy hides at Walmart now, and it's from Brazil, or you buy one that's been shipped from the United States to China and back. We have to take ownership of our cow again, and we do that through a community-based education system at this time.
Yeah, go ahead, Stock. Thanks for raising your hand.
No problem. Thanks for letting me speak. And I might touch on something. I'm just now coming in. But as far as the beef goes, I'm a rancher myself here in Oklahoma. 85% of the beef comes out of the panhandle of Oklahoma and Texas. And most of that gets shipped overseas. And what people don't realize is what gets shipped back comes back to us, but it comes back as their cows. And when the packing unit touches it, they name it USDA. So just because it says American Angus on there, it still comes from China, Brazil, Argentina, and all those other countries. They're sending us their nasty beef. So you got to be careful. Here in the state of Oklahoma, we passed a law that I can raise it, butcher it, sell it right out of my backyard without having USDA in my back pocket. So we passed that law in Oklahoma. Also, I also see tags on here. Be careful of the Cattle Association here in Oklahoma are pushing for these RFID chips. They're wanting to do it for the bigger ranchers and push out the smaller ranchers because we won't be able to afford all these new RFID tracking system and stuff. And all that is going to do is eventually put a carbon tax on us. So they'll fly a drone over and they'll beep, 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 count how many cows you're on, and then they're going to carbon tax you. And then you're going to pay on that cow or bull or steer or calf, whatever you have tagged out there. You'll be paying a tax way before you even see profits. And that's not on top of the hay, the feed, the diesel, and time and labor and stuff like that. So they're going to tax us to death. So be sure you know who you're backing as far as the Cattle Association, because they're not for the little guys, and they're going to push us out as far as that goes. So just be careful. I quit donating to the Cattle Association. I don't do anything with any type of association if it's not American First.
Yeah, well, I'm gonna tell you, I had my little run-in with an official on that. Now I'm gonna pull out my inner redneck right quick, so y'all have to excuse me. But this old boy made my piss hot. Now I'm just gonna say it. Uh, I told a young man point blank, I will sell my damn cattle without an EID tag. I am not putting an EID tag in my cattle, and there's not a damn thing he's gonna do about it. I said, there is more than one way to skin a cat. And I said, I know a bunch of ways to do it. I'll sell straight from my farm to another producer. But I can guarantee you, you will never see an EID tag in the ear of my cattle standing on my farm. And there ain't nobody from the USDA or anywhere else going to walk on my place and tell me I got to do it. Because I will show them the blacktop highway in a heartbeat. That's just where I stand on it.
I stand right there with you, brother. I mean, I'm a small guy myself, and I'm trying to scale up. And the only thing I put on my tags is my phone number in case it gets out. If someone happens to see it drive by, they can call me. But everybody pretty much knows where I live and which ones are mine. So some don't even have tags on there. I just don't do it because I don't have to worry about cattle rustlers around here. Plus, I got enough signs on my property. And I got one that says, if you can read this, you're in range, and you can take that as how you want to see it. But,
it doesn't hurt to get a little redneck every once in a while. I mean, I can sit there and talk just as easy with somebody, or I could get just as cotton picking redneck with equal enthusiasm. It don't bother me one bit.
Yeah,
but
I don't know where everybody's at, but I would highly suggest DD1. I'll follow you and I'll send you the bill that we did, and then you can post it on your group here, and then wherever you guys are at in your state, try to get with your representatives, and they can copy our state law and they can implement it. I know it's kind of late right now because they already started session in some states like ours, but start.
Yeah, well, I know that bills. The Mississippi Cattlemen's Association, which I'm a member of, at the NCBA convention, they voted against the EID tag mandate. The Alabama Cattlemen's Association, the Alabama Cattlemen's Association voted against it, but they said, well, we got to comply with the NCBA. No, hell you don't.
No.
I ain't got to comply with nobody that's going to sit there and, who I got to comply with when a man sits and hand me a handful of $100 bills.
Exactly.
I got to comply with a guy handing me the $100 bills. That's the only person I'm worried about.
Yep. But be sure.
I kind of got a little redneck on you.
No, you're fine. I'm redneck. I'm originally from Texas. I moved up here to Oklahoma just because it was cheaper and a lot more land that I can buy. But I just highly suggest everybody here in the States or abroad, please read your labels and ask questions, because just because it says USDA doesn't really mean it's coming from America. So just be careful on what you're reading, especially that they're trying to push this mandate as well on some of the vaccines, the mRNA vaccines. So they're trying to push that in our livestock, and not only cattle. That goes for pigs, hogs, lambs, chickens, whatever the case may be. So be careful on what you read, and be sure to have your legislator make some type of bill that it's got to have all the ingredients of what all it's had in there besides just grass. So it's time to wake up. I mean, they're coming after us one way or another.
Yeah, I really wish Brianna could be here. Bless her heart. She is. If y'all do not know Brianna Segal, oh my God, the woman is a rock star.
Yeah,
Brett,
I heard.
Go ahead.
No, I heard from Brianna. She's going to be out tonight. She sends her apologies, but we'll do this again. And we should probably dedicate a whole spaces just for Brianna's work that she's done. She's one of the best research analysts, and she's been in policy work for a very long time. So her connections and her communications on the broad spectrum of all cattle ranching is pretty, untouched at these times. So.
Yeah, thanks, Texas. I appreciate that, folks. Brett, Texas, if you're not following them people and you care about what's going on in the beef industry, give these guys a follow. I don't know which, any more that I can tell you. Brianna, and there was one that popped up here. Now, Brianna introduced me earlier to her. And so, there's a lot of people that's in the beef industry that could use a good follow. I mean, the consumer's not alone. The ranchers are out there fighting for y'all. We're fighting for ourselves, but we're also fighting for y'all, because right now, the beef industry is the only industry right now that they have not conquered. They've conquered the poultry, they've conquered the pork. They haven't conquered the beef industry yet, because when they go picking with the beef industry, they're picking a fight with a different bear. And at least from the chair I'm sitting in. So,
No, you're exactly right.
if
I mean,
people,
Texas is fighting, Oklahoma's fighting, Arkansas, pretty much the lower 48 down here is fighting against all that. Also, Wyoming. I know Wyoming is, in Montana, as far as I know. But yes, please. I mean, and find a good group to get into. Just because you don't raise cattle, but you eat cattle, get into these organizations and be a voice for the farmer. I mean, the more that comes into us and really helps us out, because now there's, instead of just 10 or 15 people, chewing the cud about a cow, you're in there being a concerned citizen, and for your health of your future generation of your kids and your feed, that you can make a noise as far as that goes as well. So don't be scared to join a cattle association or a hog association or whatever livestock organization that you have in your area. Find one, follow them on Facebook, donate to them, find a local rancher, buy a quarter of beef, buy 10, 20 head of chickens from them and process them, buy eggs from them. I mean, I sell eggs, I sell chickens, I sell cows. I raise my hog. I go to the local FFA. You can go to shows and help out a student that didn't make the cut or the sale. You can buy that pig from them, and you can ask them, say, hey, can you run it to the butcher? Since they already got a trailer, they have no problem doing that. And then you just pay for the processing and pick it up. So get more involved in what you're eating besides Walmart and Chick-fil-A or McDonald's. None of that is all trash.
Yeah. Well, I'm making it my personal mission, and I've told Brett this a couple of times. I'm in the Southeast. Okay, I'm dead in the middle of the state of Mississippi. Now I'm a big Alabama boy, and I'm a Roll Tide, so that's neither here nor there. But I'm a little sick and tired of the ranchers in the Southeast sitting on our dead ass and letting these boys out west fight our battles for us. Now, I'm making it my mission to light a fire into some of these ranchers' ass around here. And I'm going to tell you something. Within 100-mile radius of where I'm at right now, I have lit a fire under a bunch of these small producers' ass, because they are throwing a fit about what's going on. And let's just put it this way. You will never get 70% compliance to make this EID tag mandate worthwhile. Not if anything I've been engaged is going to go nationwide. So, but anyway, as people, we got some great folks up here. If you got any questions, raise your hand. If you don't have a mic, got plenty of them. Request. We're going to go for about another probably 20 minutes, and then we're going to shut it down, and we will definitely do another one as time progresses. And but I want to thank everybody that is here. I hope we've been educational, and I hope we haven't talked over anybody's head. And I hope we just shot y'all the plain truth, because that's what it's all about. So, but anyway, yeah, go ahead, Stock.
Appreciate it. Just a little background on myself. I'm a disabled veteran. I serve my country. I'm still serving my country as a rancher to provide a good product. I don't sell it, outrageously. I do anywhere from $7 to $8 a pound, and that's straight across the board. I don't do, because you bought a ribeye, I'm gonna charge you $20. It's a flat 8 across the board, and I'm not making a ton of money, and that barely covers my fuel and feed. But I'm trying to provide a good product for my community and my area. So I'm still in the fight, and I just highly, follow me. I'll follow you back if you want to get involved. I helped, my wife ran for legislation here in Oklahoma 2 years ago. We lost against the incumbent because he was more for the city folks, and that's what they were wanting. But I helped get a lady. We flipped his seat this year. I got her in. I got another state representative. We flipped an incumbent out of her spot, and so yeah, we got plenty of coverage here as far as legislations go. I sent them bills that I see from other states that are doing. And I say, here's the language. All they got to do is copy and paste, and they can just bring that up on the floor or bring it to committee and be heard, and hopefully it becomes law. So, the reason why the federal government is getting away with what they're doing is because they fed y'all a lot of shit saying that your voice don't count and your vote don't matter. It's all a lie. It wouldn't be in the Constitution if it wasn't, and it wouldn't be one of your God-given rights to do that. So that's one way they keep you divided, is by telling you that it's not worth anything and don't get involved. And that's why they continue doing what they're doing, is by stealing it. So keep voting, stay proactive, vote on everything, help other ranchers, promote their meat, give them a good review. Hell, I would love to have someone come out here and help me every once in a while, mend some fences or move some cows around, and I can do sweat equity, for a quarter of beef or something like that, so there's all kinds of ways of getting around a lot of stuff that we can do. We can take it back to the old days of just bartering. So just keep that in mind and just help us out. I mean, it's a fight out here in Oklahoma and Texas.
Well, yeah, and on that, go to beef.support. You're the type of producer, rancher, cattleman that we want on our beef maps. Reach out to the Beef Initiative and spread that around, because there's not a bunch of fees, and you have all this, this mid-level marketing that really stills a voice of the American rancher. And the Beef Initiative has a peer-to-peer relationship building in a digital world too, and that's what we need. That way, the education expands out quicker and faster. And you're right. Local laws, local cottage food laws, local processing, EPA, we have to start educating ourselves. And if you're in those communities, our producer always brings up, if you leave a big city, you are in cattle country within 30 to 50 miles in the United States. And the United States does not realize that. So appreciate y'all. Good for Oklahoma. I'll have to come out and see you sometime.
Yeah, door's always open. Hey, what did you say that was? Beef what?
Beef.support, and then of course beefmaps.com.
Beef mat?
Maps.
I put it in the pill. Beefmaps.com is located in the pill. So you can just look down there.
Okay. Yeah, I would like to
real quick.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Real quick before we move on, I just wanted to say one thing, that I'm a big health freak. I actually feel like that no one is going to look after my health but me personally. That's my responsibility. And I also think that a lot of times, just realizing that convenient foods lead to inconvenient health issues. And if we're choosing the right beef for us and for our families, we're really doing something for ourselves. And I think that's something that now with Maha coming in, we could really all get behind. But my question is for anyone, I actually buy my own beef. I get together with another couple and I buy half a cow. We go in together and we split that cow together. And it's really nice actually having that cow in my freezer and actually having it and not having to shop for anything else other than vegetables. It's really a convenience for me. So I try to tell people, not only is it healthy, but just imagine having to take care of just your fruits and vegetables per se, and not even having to think about meat. That is a very nice convenience for people. So I do that. And a lot of people have said to me, well, it's a luxury to be able to do that. And it's really not. It's actually a lot more inexpensive to go in with someone or to get a group of people in your neighborhood and actually search out these farmers and go in and buy a cow and split up a cow. It is not only convenient, but it's also a lot more cheaper to do that. Yes, it takes a little bit of time, but once you start doing it, it's really a matter of convenience, and it's very economical too. So I really wanted to say one thing. I'm super excited for one of my favorite speakers on all of Spaces, Mr. Ed. Thank you so much for being here, Mr. Ed, and I would really love to hear what you have to say.
Yeah, I'm up in Massachusetts, and we're of course more sheep and dairy country, but we've had this year will be our 49th Sheep and Woolcraft Festival. It's on Memorial Day weekend on Saturday and Sunday. Said we started it 49 years ago. It's separate from our county fairs, and it's been really helpful to bring, we have kids show, we have adult show, we have lots of woolcraft, we have workshops, we serve lamb, we don't bring in any sort of commercial junk food. A lot of education. We get people they'll travel all the way from the cities, New York City, Boston, to come to it. It's a really good way to folks that just don't understand any of this stuff to talk with farmers and meet their animals and talk to the kids especially. It's really inspiring to parents to see kids in 4-H and stuff that are really dedicated and been doing it for years, and to buy products and sample lamb. It's often something that because of World War II and all the soldiers that went to Europe and had the sort of rancid canned lamb, they came back and they couldn't stand the smell of it. Reminded them of war. So we've got a new generation to do that. And so I really encourage, if you've got a fairgrounds in the off season, get some farmers together and put on a little fair for them, cook up some good food, educate, talk about what you do, why you do it. It really helps. And it's just, it makes you feel good. It's something that really inspires us every year to keep going. As much as it's hard, we don't take in any funding from any government funding or anything else. We have the kids work, we have an oxen group that actually works the parking lot, and they get the money. They get a cut of the percentage from the parking lot. We have other kids that work the food booth. They get a cut for their 4-H club, and then that gives them money to travel, to go to an event or something. So it's just really positive for the public all around, and it helps them to inspire why buying local food is so important. So keep up the good work, everybody. I think, as far as lamb and beef are the two things that are one thing that hasn't been taken over, as everybody said, and we need to hold on to that for the benefit of all. So thanks so much for having me up, and keep working.
Yeah, thanks, Ed. I appreciate that. We got a number of hands, folks.
Yeah,
Carmen.
I have a line of I have them in order, DD, if you want me to give you that.
Yeah, go ahead. I'm
Okay.
pretty sure Carmen's next.
Carmen's
so go
next.
Ahead.
Yep.
Well, thank you very much. I was just going to just say, to speak with what Tracy said. I 100% agree. At the time, everyone feels like it's more expensive right then and there. But if you look at it, for the month or two, it's definitely more inexpensive. I wanted to say this: how I'm getting involved is I've reached out to the NCCA, which is the North Carolina Cattlemen's Association here in North Carolina. I've spoken to several members on the board there, and I've also got a meeting within the next 2 weeks. I believe it's a week and a half with the NCCA and a few other associations here in North Carolina, just to address some concerns that I may have, or my community and so forth. So I just want to say it's really simple to research that information in your community or in your state, and send out an email and get involved that way. Farmers have been fighting a hard fight for many years. I am not a farmer, but I grew up amongst many farmers in my family. And when I was a young girl, I thought I was a farmer. Okay, so and I love that, and that's where my memories are, and that's where my foundation lies. And farming can teach us so many different things in life and has done that for me. So I say we need to stand with our farmers and get out up front and start speaking out, for them and fighting with them to stand for, their rights and our rights. Thank a farmer. Thank you to all that provide. And I make sure I go and get my vegetables and my meat from local farmers. So God bless you all. Thanks, TD, Tracy.
Yeah, thanks, sweetheart. Tracy, are you vacuuming, or was that
Nope.
Taylor vacuuming?
That's Carmen vacuuming. She's
I'm on a job.
she's the only one that works
Sorry.
around here, Dee Dee. You know better than that.
Okay, all right. Go ahead with your list,
All
sweetheart.
right. So we have VG Knights. He's up next.
Hey y'all, great space. It's interesting. I started talking with Bonk on some of his spaces in the past few weeks, and it's led me to all kinds of really cool people. DD, you're one of them who I follow, and now through you, I've been able to kind of listen to a wonderful panel here, including Ed, Texas, Brett, Carmen. All you guys are sound like wonderful people, and I love your input on everything here. By the way, I am currently looking at beefmaps.com. Interesting site. I will definitely use that. And I really liked what was it? I think he left. No, there, Ostock. I liked what you had to say, sir. I'm from Texas myself. I'm from the San Antonio area. I actually grew up on a ranch in Bergheim, Texas. We had cattle when I was young, but we kind of evolved into a wildlife management program. But I appreciate you. Thank you for your service. I am a law enforcement officer, disabled myself. I'm currently home injured, probably for the next 3 months, but it's given me the ability to expand my knowledge base in so many areas by joining spaces like this. So just want to say thank y'all. I don't have anything to add. I'm just a fly on the wall.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate you you adding to the conversation. And if we can hear from Taylor, go ahead, Taylor.
Oh, one other thing I kind of want to touch on as well, I know Ed in Texas and Brett, they all kind of mentioned it, is buying local, and buying local is keeping all the, the majority of those dollars of the beef and the meat that you're purchasing in your local community. Far too many dollars anymore are leaving the local community in the agriculture sector. So if you can, buy local, support your local guy, and that doesn't, just extend for beef or lamb, but, even vegetables and things like that. There's generally somebody in your area that you can source a lot of these things from. And you're not buying from the big companies like Walmart and your Kroger's and all these other companies that, are taking 50 to 60%, 70% of, the dollars that American farmers produce. And then the other thing I wanted to touch on real quick is the age of the American farmer. I mean, most American farmers, or the average age is over, just right at about 60, and less than 9% are 35 years and younger. So we also kind of need to be looking for the next generation as well. And as a first generation guy, it's so hard. I mean, especially given the way things are right now with interest rates, the cost of land, equipment, things of that nature. So if you can, try to stay local and help your local guys, that's I think the best route we could go for. So Dee Dee, Tracy, I want to thank everybody that has all came in and spoke tonight and made this great space what it is. So thanks.
No, thank you, Taylor.
Yeah, thanks, Taylor. Appreciate it. Go ahead, sweetheart.
Homestead is next. Looking forward to hearing from Homestead.
Oh, thanks. So I just hopped on to listen. I actually work in this space, but something Dee Dee said made me feel like I should jump on and share some insight. So I got pulled into this space, and we started this nonprofit here to do litigative work for independent producers. But we're small right now. But where I got pulled from was the Second Amendment space. We used to do I used to work for an organization called Firearms Policy Coalition, and as you may have noticed, we have more ground won in the Second Amendment space than at any point since 1984. And I wanted to share a little bit about why, because of some things that have been shared on here. The first thing is that the community in the Second Amendment space realized that between the consumer and the commercial end, that they had a joint interest and that neither side could leave the other side hanging. And so all of the large producers, these firearms companies that over the years allowed the lobbying end to be done just on the consumer side or through organizations like the NRA, they started investing in more aggressive things like actually funding legal work to be done and legal challenges to the laws that existed. The consumers became super bought in when companies did that, and they said, "Hey, this particular business is protecting my rights." And when we talk about the Maha movement and everything like that, this is a unique opportunity where the consumer is very concerned about where their food is coming from and being able to broadcast to the consumer that, hey, you need to support the businesses, because most people don't know how hard things are for the average agricultural producer. But then on the flip side, the producer needs to show the consumer, hey, I'm fighting these fights. I'm in the middle of these fights. The second thing that Didi mentioned was not leaving the people in the West alone. I'm out in the West, so I'm very appreciative of him saying that. But we have to treat every attack on every ag producer's rights as a collective attack on all of us. And that means that if one ranch is under attack, they're getting support around the country. And I'm seeing more and more of that, which is awesome. But we've really got to bring the consumer into that fight as well and say, this attack on Amos Farms, out in Pennsylvania, is actually an attack on everybody, type of thing. And then the final thing I was simply going to say is, thank you for all of you producers that are stepping up and doing all this. You guys are in a tough spot. My one thing I would suggest as part of all of your strategies is to start looking at ways to actually use ranchers as a legal challenge to laws that shouldn't exist. And there are a couple of organizations out there already doing it, but it's a very, very effective way to push back laws and regulations that don't have a legitimate authority. And it's often easier to do than trying to outshout those big lobbying dollars by like the big processors and the big food companies. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you, buddy. I appreciate that. Folks, there's one thing I want to do before we end the space. I mean, I want questions answered here, but we have a convention coming up, and I promise you I'll get right back to the hands. Brett asked to kind of let everybody know about the RCAF USA convention. Then we'll get right back to the hands. I do apologize. I didn't mean to jump in, but Brett's been waiting a little while. Go ahead, Brett. Tell everybody about it.
No, Dee, you got me fired up when you were talking about firing up the ranchers down in the southeast, like us guys up north and to the west. And I just wanted to let everybody know, RCAF USA is the largest cattlemen's organization that represents purely independent cattle and sheep producers and the rural communities that they are a part of. And we have a convention once a year, and this year it's June 17th through the 19th in Deadwood, South Dakota. The agenda is not up yet. I put a link in the comments, but go take a look at the RCAF USA YouTube page, and there's good quality videos from last year's convention. We had Alex Newman, we had Laura Logan, several USDA officials. We start with a prayer breakfast. We ended last year with Laura Logan. Been getting great attendance. So if you guys want to be a part of something like that, go check that YouTube page out. Check out our website if you're curious about our issues. But I sure appreciate this space, Dee. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Brett. I appreciate that. Okay, my co-host, who's next?
All righty there. So Sunlight's next. Welcome to the stage, Sunlight.
Hey, thank you, Tennessee Tracy. Appreciate it. So I, live in North Texas, and a couple of independent producers that gotten to know over the years at the local farmers market. Their mantra is they won't put something on your table if they couldn't feel good about it being on their table, and that's the beauty of having independent farmers and independent ranchers and such. And one of the things that concerned me about these EID tags was the control point, that they would be able to force vaccines and other things into cattle that you wouldn't be able to move them through the process, through to the packer if they could, scan the EID tag and then say, well, this cow does not meet our, vaccine requirements, and therefore, we're not going to, harvested, if you will. So I'm just curious, from the cattlemen on the call, or on the space, that what can be done to try, because there's like four big packers, right, and that gives the government the ability to create a choke point. And so I think that part of the solution also needs to be, to try to figure out how to get some more regional packers, into the mix if it's economically viable. And the other part about it is, I just love the Maha Alliance and everything Nicole Shanahan is promoting, and RFK is promoting, and any thoughts on the wellness farms concept for not only hoping to look at another way to treat, the opiate crisis, but it's also, there's a lot of movement around it, to help bring more awareness to, the organic side of things, soil health, leveraging what the Amish do and all of that, and to try to, promote that with educational programs, with schools and such, to where, school children would be exposed to more of this concept as to, make America healthy again. So I think there's a lot of things that seem to be converging, but, if you guys could address the Packer choke point, and then what your thoughts are on the wellness farm concept. Thank you.
Yeah, Brett, you wanna take on the Packers there, buddy? I get too redneck to talk about them.
Sure. What specifically was the question about the Packers?
Go ahead and ask
Well,
your question again,
yeah,
Sunlight.
sorry, I did quite a diatribe there. My apologies, but so there are four big packers, that process. I think it's the stat that I read was like over 80% of the cattle processing, meat processors, and because of that, that gives the government a ability, to deal with just four to create a choke point, on these EID tags and vaccines and everything else for confirmation. So it seems to me like one of the things that needs to happen is to bust that up a little bit and create some more regional type things, and maybe co-ops, with independent ranchers, to process your own food or whatever. And I'm just curious as to whether or not that is something that's going on.
Well, we're sure trying. I mean, obviously from a market standpoint, the choke point is very hard on us. So imagine this, imagine four meat packers that harvest 85% of 26 million cattle every year in this country. And when those four packers, when fed cattle prices start to rise, miraculously, those four packers will all slow their plants together. And that does two things. Number one, it backs up fed cattle that have to be fed every day that are highly perishable. And that creates a more motivated seller that will take less money for his cattle. And number two, slowing that plant reduces the amount of beef on the shelves in the grocery store, raising the price for consumers. So that's what we have traditionally fought. But then, yes, now we're dealing with their desire to have mandatory ID. I guess I think a big part of that is that those four packers and a captive USDA will be able to put production constraints on cattlemen, like say with this climate craze feeding lemongrass to cattle. You've got to feed lemongrass to your cattle to reduce their methane output. Otherwise, your mandatory ID tag will blip red instead of green. You won't get access to the slaughter capacity. So yeah, it's good to be wearing
So
normal
it's going to
natural
measure
to be
cow
wearing that
parts.
choke point. Well, I mean, that's one thing that we haven't talked about tonight is radical environmentalism, and God bless Trump so far, at least. He struck all the climate verbiage out of USDA. And that's something that we were, there's been two battles that have really increased in the last 3 or 4 years. Number one, property rights, like the Homestead Liberation League out west. Property rights were always a Western issue. That's where the public lands are, but we've seen it more and more here, even in the South Dakota. And the other thing is this climate business, all the climate smart commodities and the production constraints and the phony programs that have been created that are just kind of a money laundering deal. But yeah, it's just monopolies are dangerous. The Boston Tea Party, guys, was not all about taxes from England. The Boston Tea Party was about having to buy your tea from the British East India Company, which was the king's monopoly in England. And the colonists didn't like having to buy only that kind of tea when all of a sudden they had international trade to choose from. So it's very dangerous. That choke point is what resulted in empty shelves during COVID. And you're exactly right when you say that more and more regional processing would break that bottleneck, create redundancy and resiliency, and way more food security across the nation.
Thank you.
Oh,
Thank you for that.
and one quick example there, Hometown Meats in Luling, Texas. It started up during COVID, built it out over less than 2 years, but in the end result of its throughput now, it's servicing over 400 producers. And it's a regional base down there in central South Texas that, it's on an interstate system. So it's possible. We need a lot more money behind but to make this processing regional based, you really have to have the throughput and you have to have the financing. And we need to talk about liquidity for our ranchers, because where are they going to get their money for their cattle? And, to rebuild herds is quite the feat. So there's a lot of different pain points and bottlenecks here, but there's working solutions. And, I think with this type of communication that's more peer to peer with the consumers and the cattlemen, it's going to help out a lot in a short period of time.
Yeah, and I was just curious about the co-op concept because my great grandfather was a farmer, and they formed the co-ops out of necessity, to have a thrashing machine, to shake the wheat off the stalk, and that led to combines and other things that they would have a shared risk, shared reward type deal, so the co-op seemed to work very, very well in the Midwest, with the farmers. And the last thing I wanted to see if you guys could address is your feeling on these wellness farms and helping with the education. It's almost like a 4-H program possibility, that also would pull in a lot of city kids, out to the area to try to educate them on healthy food, sustainable systems, and organics and everything else. And that could extend, obviously to the meat products.
Well, right now, the I Am Texas Slim Foundation, we've partnered up with the Independent Health Alliance in the United States. So we're bringing a lot of doctors in, a lot of nutritionists in to, be able to have these cradle of health type of summits to where it's based on education. You can look at the type of inputs, and the cattle producers can be represented with a new voice. That I always say it's a great American health initiative being led by the Great American Rancher. So there's going to be a lot of possibilities. The Beef Initiative has had over 21 summits over 4 years in Australia, Asia, United States. And so there's a new health movement coming, and that's going to empower our ranchers in a way that hopefully they can see, as far as doing the local and doing the throughput. So there's all kinds of possibilities about to unfold.
Well, this is
Thanks, Slim.
exciting.
Appreciate that. Yeah, it is. Who we got next, Tennessee?
So if you don't mind, Dee Dee, Allstocks and Bonk have already spoken, and I do see your request up. So don't go anywhere. But let's have Dirk come up, and he has his hand up. Let's have someone new get a chance to be on the stage here. So Dirk, go ahead.
Hey, I love the topic. Thanks for giving me the mic. a little bit of background. Grew up on a farm. Worked my way through college as an apprentice butcher at Safeway. Worked as a butcher for 20 years. Went to work for the USDA. Been an inspector for 14 years. I'm multi-species, but it was mostly poultry, turkeys, and rabbits. We have a rabbit plant in Arkansas. What the gentleman was talking about. Oh, I'm also a cattle farmer. The co-op is our way out of this. I'm really, I retired a year ago from USDA. I couldn't take it anymore. But one of the things that went bad in co-ops is somebody owning too much stock. If the ranchers would get together in an area, I mean, I could write up a HACCP plan for the slaughter facility. Dealing with inspector is really kind of a joke. I mean, in a way, because they don't know squat most of the time. But if everybody in the community would put the pressure on these four packers and find alternate ways to sell from farmer to consumer, is the way out of this. And like maybe at the local sale barns or a cattlemen's association meeting, if I'm sure y'all are a lot bigger ranchers and farmers than, I mean, the most I might have 50 mother cows. But the idea of people being able to buy straight from the farmer and splitting it up with their family, or being able to sell quarters and halves, that's possible too. And my whole idea is to do to the packers what they're doing to us by slowing down production and backing up cattle in the feed process. And one thing y'all were talking about fertilizing soil. We had an abundance of chicken litter in Arkansas. It was, I mean, you could grow grass like you wouldn't believe. And Oklahoma sued Arkansas and said we were causing five phosphorus, and that was years later turned out to be bull. But the regenerative farming to me is just taking care of the soil and quit putting so much chemicals for weeds and stuff. But with cattle, we have to get it back locally, and the whole public is on board wanting to buy directly from the farmer. Thanks.
Well, thank you so much, Dirk, for speaking. So all stocks, go ahead.
Appreciate it. I don't mean to take up all the space. I just have a lot of info that I like to pass on. This one, if you can just write it down, and then I'll try to put the information up there. But it's called Farming Without a Bank for all you ranchers out there. I'm starting to implement that this year. And what this does, it uses whole life insurance where you can borrow money from your whole life insurance policy by setting these up. So like, instead of going to the bank and borrowing $250,000 and putting your property or whatever collateral you have, you actually have a life insurance policy that you can borrow from. And within 6 years, you'll be able to buy anything you want. And as far as like big tractors, that cost $500,000 to $1 million, you can borrow against that as well. And that you just pay yourself back. And then if you get in a bind that year, you don't have to pay yourself back. So you literally become your own bank. As far as everybody else that's not a farmer, it's called Becoming Your Own Bank by R. Nelson Nash. You can do the same thing. And this is how you set up generational wealth for your families. So the Farming Without a Bank, her name is Mary Jo Ironman, IRMEN. She's from Nebraska, and she got mentored by Nelson Nash. So she just spinned it a little bit so she can educate the farmers in her state of Nebraska. So it's basically the same book, but it just makes it more sense. If you're not a farmer yet, you can become your own bank by reading his book. and then farming without a bank is by her, and that helps the ranchers understand because she uses a lot of terminology as far as that goes. And if you see up in the top, I also posted SB 268. They're trying to pass a law where they can start spreading human manure on our properties. So we don't have a choice. They'll just say, hey, we're going to send you a load to your pasture and we're going to spread it out there. We don't need this human manure in our pastures where our livestock are eating it and where there's grass is in it, because the amount of pills and stuff, it doesn't get broke down. So that gets leached into your property. It's no different than those aerobic systems. They said they were so good, and my cows won't eat any of the grass to where the water sprays from all that because of all the chlorine that's in it. So I know it's a lot of information. If you want more information, just hit me up, message me, and I'll write it out more about it. But look up those 2 books, get those implemented. It's well worth the time. And I don't mean to take up the most time, but I just got a lot of information.
Well, you sure do have a lot of information. I know Dee Dee appreciates it. And just Dee Dee, I'm just going to run down the 2 that you have left, which is Bonk, and then we have Miles. So go.
Okay, that's fine. And after that, we're going to do a hard stop. Folks, we will do this again. Trust me. As more information becomes available, we will have this space again. Again, I have a group called Cattlemen United. And but there's several people on here that, if you're not following them, follow them. Texas Slim, Brett, different people here, this well-versed ranchers. I'm just a small producer, and I'll tell everybody right quick, when it comes to cattle ranching, hell, I'm the damn crumbs at the bottom of the potato chip bag. So, but it don't matter if you're running 500 through the chute or 50 through the chute. It's still the same thing. So, thank you, Tracy. I appreciate that. Bonk, go ahead, buddy.
Yeah, I've got some questions on market opportunity and barrier of entry, and you guys might not be able to answer. And if that's the case, that's fine. I'll assign somebody to do this for me. But I'm reading up on these 4 companies: this Cargill, the Tyson, NBC, and JBS in particular. That story is wild with those guys, and how they went from 36% to it looks like 86.2% of the packing process. Earlier, I was wondering, it was like, where the hell is the break in the supply chain? The break in the supply chain seems to be, you guys go to the slaughterhouse, and the slaughterhouse quotes you a price based on what the packer dictates without any back and forth there. That's your break. So I'm looking at all this, and I see that they spent about $40 billion to in mergers and acquisitions in order to acquire this, basically 86% of all the capacity there. And I'm wondering, is there some sort of barrier to entry that I'm not seeing for a market opportunist to come in here and go, what if because I'm doing some quick napkin math here, and I'm looking at an outlay of 8.1 billion in order to take 20% market share with looks like about a 31% growth rate, which is slow by tech standards, which is the industry I come from. But in terms of steadiness, and like, that doesn't seem like bad math. So is there a particular reason why nobody has stepped up and decided to kind of start chipping away at this kind of monopoly that's been set up here? I mean, I see there's some antitrust stuff that the last administration tried pushing in to maybe open the door there. So I don't know where that went. Is basically what I'm asking is, has there been any attempt at venture at all to kind of chip into this? Because reputationally, it doesn't seem you guys are fond of these 4, especially this JBS company, which has top line revenues of 18 billion on 61% margins. That's insane. And you guys are saying you're only getting 52% of the money to the consumer. 4 years ago, you were only getting 37. It looks like in the 80s, you were getting 64. So even if somebody came in new and offered the old rates of 64, which seems to be the equilibrium, that seems like win-win for everybody. Like, what stops this?
Well, here's the thing, Bonk. I mean, I heard an old buddy of mine is thinking seriously about opening up his own processor. His name is Bonk, and I'm just wondering if that may be true. I mean, I'm just saying, buddy.
SaveBeef.org. Yeah,
I,
that's what we're doing. We're going after this. I mean,
I
this is a whole shot, of opportunity of time. And this is why all the cattle producers are coming together. I mean, you have to look at herd shares, you have to look at throughput, you have to look at wholesale beef prices, retail. So there's so much that we can tackle right now because they're extended on both sides. And so, go to savebeef.org and, we'll join a collaboration. We have a lot of producers coming together right now and they're doing, herd share programs. It'll be community based, regional based processing. So there's a lot of action being taken. But, one of the things is where's the money coming from? Where did it come in the past and where's it going to come in the future? It's going to change. And this is a big global shift. And we're going to have to be ready for investment strategies as well.
Yeah. So I guess to a follow up on that is what is the relationship between the packer and the slaughterhouse? I mean, how long are those contracts? Because I'm seeing these anecdotal stories as I've just been reading for the last hour and a half here of, ranchers saying, look, my cost was $1.60 per pound. I went to the slaughterhouse and they just mandated $1 a pound from JBS without any, inspection or negotiation whatsoever. So my question is, if somebody did want to chip in on the, kind of chip into the Packer game, so to speak, sensing a market opportunity and an opportunity to take share, would that also necessitate getting in on the slaughterhouse game as well? Because these relationships are how can anybody kind of enlighten me on what that it's nothing but opacity between those two sectors and what I've been trying to find in the last hour. Admittedly, I've only been looking for an hour, but
Yeah. Well, I mean, they're packer processors. I mean, they're in bed. I mean, everything that they do is hand in hand. Look at JBS and Cargill and Cavness, Cavines. It's a regional based processor multinational packer relationship. And so if you can break that down, you can look at the possibilities. And there is an inversion that can happen, and that's once again, I've been on the road for 5 years, and everybody that founded the Beef Initiative said there's a perfect storm coming. What that meant is that there's a big global shift coming, and it's going to hit, agriculture. But there's also opportunity that's going to show its wonderful head here in hopefully this new administration.
all right, thank you.
Well, let's welcome to the stage our favorite Aussie, Mr. Miles. Welcome to the stage.
What's up, Miles?
G'day, DD. Hello, Tennessee. Sorry if I'm sounding a bit strange and lisping a bit. I had a couple of teeth removed today. But I've been sitting here listening, and I'm not a producer or anything here in Australia, but I do listen to ABC radio a lot, and we got a radio show and a TV show called On the Land here. I listen to that because I like to keep up with what's happening out there. Regarding our food security, all that sort of thing. And, well, I don't know if you guys do live exports over there, but in 2026 or 2027, we're stopping our live exports of lamb because we used to send them to Asian, Middle East, and all over the place. And then they'd slaughter it there because here in Australia, we got a big problem. Over the last 20, 25 years, maybe a little longer, they've slowly been shutting down all our slaughterhouses. And you've only got as Texas was saying, you got the big producers. We got Cargill here. I know we got Cargill. I'm not sure about the other ones, but yeah, we got a few, big processor packers here in Australia. And we're slowly losing the ability to process our own meat here. But I did have a question. Now, you guys, I know I've heard DD speak about this, and I've heard a few other people speak about it, where you can't go to your local farm and or your local cattleman, or your local rancher to buy a full beast, a cow, or a sheep or pig or any of that. Here in Australia, you can actually go to the producer, buy that. You can buy that beast. A bloke will come along with a refrigerated trailer. A small, not like as in a semi trailer, but like a box trailer, a small trailer you can bump a hitch behind your vehicle, behind your little truck there, and he takes it in, he cuts it all up, packs it for you, and off you go home. Saves a lot of money. Well, we don't call them cattlemen and ranchers here. We call them pastoralists or cockies or something like that. Different language for a different country, but yeah, we can do that. There's actually a lot of people out there, even just up behind where I live here. I live just north of Sydney on the east coast of Australia, a place called the Central Coast, and just behind me, there's a lot of small cattle farms up there, and people who do, just small production, maybe 50, 60 head. And what they're doing is what we call it here is paddock to plate. So basically, the people who own the restaurant or the cafe can go up there and say, right, I want that cow, I want it slaughtered, cut up, and supplied to me. And that's how a lot of things happen here in Australia. People can go, you can go direct to your local farmer and buy your fruit and vegetables from your local farm. So we're a little bit lucky here in Australia in that regard, but yeah, but we're about to lose our live exports. I don't know if you guys do live exports over there in the US with your cattle and that, but we do here in Australia. Anyway, I'll yield. Thanks, DD in Tennessee, and I'll shut my mouth now.
Thanks, Miles. I appreciate it. We got one hand left, and B, we're going to let you be the last speaker of the night. You've had your hand up, darling. Folks, I want to say again from my heart, thank you so much for coming, being a part of this space. It is recorded, so y'all can go back and play it for your friends or anybody else. We will do this again. Um, I'm a fighter. I'm gonna damn sure fight this every step of the way until they put me in the ground. So that's where your host stands on it. I can just tell you that right now. B, go ahead and wrap everything up for us, sweetheart.
Thank you, Dee Dee. What a great space. You and Tracy have done such a great job. I think this is probably the most important space I've been in weeks. I was feverishly unboxing Tracy, and I was telling her I was emptying out my freezer of what I was going to cook this week. And I think it's important. The gentleman earlier said that, we need to remember there's more to the side of beef than the ribeye. We need to remember that marketing drives the market, right? So we need to remember to market to one another, like, sirloin for, pepper steak this week. Like, we need to remember that, we have the buying power, and we need to use all parts of the cow. We need to remember the cheeks and all the fun different things. And I just think it would be great if we could get back to the old school ways of sharing recipes with each other instead of allowing the giant corporations to tell us what we need to be cooking. So that's just what came to my mind, and that's what Tracy and I were talking about, and I wanted to share it with you. So thank you so much. What a great space, and I just really appreciate you, and thank you for fighting for us.
Yeah, thank you, sweetheart. I appreciate it. Folks, we're going to get ready to probably close here. We got about 3 minutes, but I do want to offer Tracy, Brett, and Texas Slim, and some final words. And again, everybody, this space was recorded. You can repost it, go back and listen to it. But we're going to let our guest speakers go ahead and have a shot at closing out. And Tennessee, thank you so much, darling. You are a savior. And Carmen, thank you so much for coming, baby. I knew I could always depend on my baby girls to support. So anyway, Tracy, and then Texas and Brett, y'all go ahead and say some final words, folks, and then we're going to close it out.
Well, I'd love to, Dee Dee, and I just can't thank you enough for taking the time out of your day, seriously, every day, to put us first, because there's no more important job than what we're consuming in our bodies. And you standing up and taking a stand for that and speaking up every day and putting your foot down is something that I will forever be grateful for. So I just really can't thank you all enough for that, for everything. And it was really nice getting able to meet Texas Slim. I mean, just having, and Brett, just having some really good people in this room. It's been one of the most informative rooms I've ever been in. So I really can't thank you enough, Dee Dee, for bringing us all together. And I hope to do it again.
Thank you, sweetheart. Slim, go ahead, and then we're going to get to Brett and let Brett close everything out, buddy. Thanks for coming again, Slim. You don't know what it means to me. Thank you.
Hey, Dee Dee, I love your accent. I love that you're from Mississippi, Alabama, everything. And everything you say is justified, and, you have a voice. And that's what we have to do. We have to bring voices to what the backbone of America is. We came from something and we created something that the world very much loves, but we now have to protect it. And it's about relationships. We live in a digital world. We have to, put these phones down, or use the digital world to go shake a rancher's hand. And it's the most important time in my lifetime. I'm up in the Texas Panhandle. It is the belly of the beast, if we say, of the multinational system. And I've grown up in this. I say I grew up in agricultural poverty because I was never part of this big centralized system. My grandfather was very independent and he got out of it, and a lot of people are getting out of it now. It's a shift. So let's look at relationships, and let's bring this beef intelligence to a new level. And the consumers, think how many mothers out there are wanting to feed their children the best food on the planet. Well, now's the time to create this new peer relationship type of parallel industry, and it's possible. And the deadly need to know. We don't need to know except the next step, and that next step is to shake a rancher's hand any way you can. Remember, SaveBeef.org is just it's a campaign that's never ending. Right now, our battle is we have an opportunity. So if you can, go to SaveBeef.org, reach out to the Beef Initiative, put hashtag beef intelligence into a Google browser and see what you come up with. So I appreciate you, Dee Dee. Tracy, it's a great meeting you. Brett, you should be closing this out. The wealth of knowledge you bring is very much needed these days. Appreciate everybody.
Thanks, Slim. Brett, go ahead and take us home, and then I'll thank everybody, and we'll close it out, buddy.
All right. Well, I thank you all very much for your gracious comments. I would just say I feel I'm really thankful. My brother and I are partners. We run a cow calf herd. We run a feedlot. We sell a little beef in halves, quarters, and wholes, but not a lot of direct marketing. But I will say that I hate to hear people apologizing because they've only got 5 cows or 50 cows or whatever. It doesn't matter. We need every size of producer to add redundancy and resiliency to our food system. You don't get big ranchers without smaller ranchers. And really, I think the common denominator that we all need to succeed is a competitive, transparent market. So I appreciate this space and getting to be on it and listen to the vast array of people. We've got consumers, we've got small processors, we have direct marketers. We have more commercial type cattlemen like me, but we're all in the same game. We all love cattle. We all love beef, and just appreciate being on. So thank you guys.
Thank you, Brett. I appreciate it. Yeah, I kind of noticed that too, Brett, real quick. And I'm going to say something about the small producers and the large ranchers. When that cow raises its tail, it's going to put a cow pie out there, and it don't matter if it's on a big ranch or a little ranch, folks. Makes no difference. If you got to vaccinate one, you're going to run them through the chute one at a time. So we all do the same work, but some just do it on a larger scale. But never apologize for it. Being a rancher, being a cattleman's a calling, and I appreciate everybody that's doing that. Again, thank you everybody for coming. We will do this again, and I just want to bid everybody a good and safe night. And thanks for coming again. And we're going to go ahead and close it out. Thank you, folks.